I'm interested to hear your thoughts of why you feel like it's dying. Because my thoughts, and I don't necessarily think or feel like it's dying, but my thoughts are that almost like any misstep in mass human culture, we fuck up for a while, and people like dig their heels into the wrong stance, and then eventually intelligent people start giving dialogue and criticism towards it, and then it gets simplified to most people to understand it, and then we all start to overcorrect. Not overcorrect, or just correct course a little bit. And so I feel like the thing is, more people are becoming aware of how hollowed out a lot of the mainstream art is becoming as a result of this algorithmic way of creating and refining and giving the people what they want.
So when I do say it's dying, what I mean is, like, I don't think that social media is necessarily going away, but I do think like its current state is like grossly misnamed, because it is. I don't really think that social media is what it was. So like a true social network on its like foundational level is like back in the day when you would meet people, friends, offices, you like a visual of this is a Rolodex or like your phone contacts. That's a social network, and it's passive, meaning that like to activate it, you have to go use it. Now, this started to evolve into things like MySpace and Facebook, which once again was just a step above this. You add your friends, and like that's the furthest your network can go. And inside that feed, you see information from those people. There's a huge shift. I forget what year it was, but it was around the time where Facebook, who at the time was just trying to make Facebook better by what we were talking about earlier, as in they needed to have higher numbers, blah, 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 because they have investors. They switched the news feed, or they switched it from a feed of your friends to like a news feed. And this was the beginning of integration of articles, but also accounts that you don't follow.
Right.
And that changed a lot of things, because later they would have acquisition of Instagram, which was kind of still like not a true social network, but like a version of it. It's refined. It just has like imagery. And then like the last social network similar to that we had, I think, is like Tumblr. If you remember that one, for example. And like that even then starts to dip the toe over the line where it's like, I'm accessing people that I do not know. Now, we're in a world currently where the only social media that's experiencing growth is TikTok. And because of that competition, the other companies are trying to like emulate their success, which is also like, I think a lot of people think is going to lead to a downfall, because they're not creating their niche for themselves. They want to be like the one-stop shop. Meta, it's logical, right? Because like that ceiling isn't there. They need to achieve it. Like the people that they're answering to, they're like, we don't care. Get us better numbers. If you fail, we'll like bring our investments somewhere else, whatever. But now we have an algorithm that's showing us what it thinks we like. Even TikTok, which is, my whole point of this is saying that TikTok is the number one platform, and it's the least social network that we've ever had.
Yeah.
It just happens to be a place where we all consume the same things and can link and send them to one another. And my friend the other day sent a poll out on their story just asking if anyone's ever taken an Instagram break and if it was beneficial for them. And it was like 60 people said like yes, and 2 people said no. And that's a commonality. I've seen that. Like, you know, every month I can see a post of somebody talking about taking a break, feeling the need to announce that. And there's the dichotomy between like, I'm taking a break, but I also have to answer to this invisible digital world. And like in there lies the exact like point in time we're at, like in existence. It's like, I have to take a break from this thing because it's causing me harm, but I need to update everyone on it because I have to come back.
Yeah.
Because I feel the same thing that you do, which is I'm a creative, and if I don't have a social media, people aren't going to see what I'm doing. I'm not going to be relevant. And then people aren't going to know that I'm creating, and I won't get like hired and stuff like that. Is that going to be like a halt to my progress? So I'm at this like weird transition period where like a lot of other people, I'm realizing the damage that it's doing to me. Back in September 2022, I took a little bit break from Instagram. I was doing like an hour a day, and then I lowered it to 30 minutes a day. And I've been doing that for 6 months. And back then, the first month, I would have told you that I'd be like, yeah, no problem. Like, I'm actually like doing fine, not on social media. And it's like every month I discovered something new about myself. And it would be along the lines of like a day when I posted a picture. I like how much more my screen time would go up on that day, or how I would feel if enough people didn't like comment on it. And these were things that I had hidden to myself in the past because I didn't want to be this version of a person that like is using social media like this. So it wasn't until I was removed from it from like several months that I realized that these are parts about me, because I'm trying really hard this past year to just like observe what's going on. Like, what am I naturally doing instead of just guiding the thoughts, which I think I've had a tendency to do most of my life, which is like, I am this person and I'll repeat it until I like become that.
Yeah.
But yeah, with social media, I also realized like anytime I was feeling down about myself, I had like a great desire to post something that would give me worth. I'd be like, this is a really good photo that I have been storing away for a day like this. And like, that's very simplistic notion. It's very basic. Everybody does it every day. But for me personally, when I'm looking at myself, I have to think about whether I want my happiness to be contingent on whether all these other people think that my work's great. And then I have to wonder, like, when's the last time that I thought something was great because I thought it was great?
Right.
So I think it's like really easy on these like social media journeys to quickly start to observe all the negative behavior in everyone else that you don't like. And that's just us holding on to like a life raft. That's just being like, no, I'm not as bad. What I'm trying to do is not look at that. I'm trying to observe social media and how it's impacting me now, because it doesn't really matter whether these companies or not think, whether they like, because I've seen documentaries where they're talking about how they've engineered it to hold our attention. If you've been off the app for a while, it like sends notifications. Of course they're doing that.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. But
that's why you gotta just take it off your phone entirely.
Yeah. And then like, can you? So yeah, the reason I think that the current rendition of it is dying is not only because it's evolving to a point that we never had a capacity for, but it's also creating a world that we can't sustain. Like, I can't maintain having a relationship with 400 people. And like, I was even getting to the point where I was feeling terrible about myself if somebody I met out in town I was supposed to know and I like didn't know their name. It would like haunt me.
Wow.
To the point where I would like practice it and stuff like that, hoping. And then you get anxiety about meeting people. And that's just a very small, granular, like local level.
Yeah.
And then like witnessing that every day, I don't know. It's very comparative. Like I was doing this, I'm like just trying to make my life better constantly. So, or find some semblance of peace. And I was reading about how like the first 30 minutes of your day is highly impactful for the rest of it. And like how you feel in those first 30 minutes. So like if you wake up and you even have like an ounce of anxiety when you're like checking your phone, you don't know what you're seeing. I personally look at NPR every morning and see how the world's falling apart.
Yeah.
Instantly anxiety.
Not a good idea to
Literally.
start the day.
Like this morning I saw how Russia like intentionally took down one of our MQ-9s and I just was like, sick.
Yeah.
But then you do that on social media. If you're observing yourself, I think like being honest with yourself, there's not going to be, most days, I feel like you're going to run across one thing that you're going to feel a little bit of jealousy or have a negative opinion towards that I didn't need to have. And like, I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to work on, I don't know, just basically it makes me feel like shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a long rant.
No, I think it was very coherent and really beautiful recounting of sort of like the inner narrative going on in your head about it. So
yeah, definitely stream of consciousness there.
Well, thank you for sharing it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the question is, it almost seems like the pressure that it's causing people to do, like what you were describing there about you can't maintain a relationship with 400 people and you're beating yourself up for not knowing kind of like a virtual stranger's name.
Yeah.
And you're making an effort to like memorize their name. It's almost like this sort of algorithm is an extension of our brain. Mm-hmm. And it's trying to push us into cornering us into a way of behaving that we are not evolutionary or biologically equipped to do.
It's like we adapted a little bit.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to this whole attention thing, because it's a really loaded thing. Like, one, I'm talking about attention, like where you put your attention, like what you were talking about too with forcing thoughts or like guiding thoughts, like repeating a thing over and over until you become it. Like that's about like where you're putting your narrative attention. And what seems like when you were pulling away from social media, a lot of what you were doing was just trying to pay attention to the raw data without you creatively interfering with it and seeing like what is. And so that's a fascinating element. There's just so much to unpack about what you said. But the attention thing is not also just this singular user interface, but it's also just this currency that like social media is about. That's how you measure your success, is the amount of likes. That's like measurable attention. Your followers, that's a measurable form of attention. And it's what people are after on there. We're all competing for on there. I think the question is, taking into context all these people that are admitting that they have voluntarily taken a break from social media for the sake of their well-being. The question is there a way to have a healthy relationship with this thing, like for real? Because we all like to think that there is. Yeah. And we all, I think a lot of us try to do that. Yeah. But it's a really pernicious demon, really, is this thing that like, you take your break, you come back, you try to reincorporate it. And maybe at first you have some guidelines for yourself. Like I can only use it this amount of time each day. I can't do this with it. I need to unfollow these accounts. I need to, stop worrying about this, start focusing on posting and blah, 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 blah. You eventually slip back into either your old ways or a new wave of
a muscle memory of sorts.
Yes,
because we have Pavlovian muscle memory at work here, forming like neuroplasticity is creating these new lines of thinking.
Yes,
for years.
Yes, and so there is that, again, the thing that keeps us from treating it like we're alcoholics that can just get rid of alcohol entirely. Yeah, there is this thing as creatives where it's like we're kind of cornered into using it if we want any shot at having a career. Yeah. At least at this point in our success. Because if we jump to a certain point where we're just known, well, then we can just pawn off the use of social media to an assistant or something like that, and we never have to touch the damn thing anymore if that's what we really want.
Which is funny because that assistant's going to pretend like they're the person running the account. So it's like, for it to exist, you need to lose like a degree of the personal touch that like the fans want anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there is going to be that sort of like ick that a lot of your diehard fans are going to have about your social media if that's the route you go. Like it's not actually him operating it. Yeah. I kind of like this idea. It seems like this is how folks like Tyler, the Creator, uses social media. It's almost like when he's got an album coming out, he goes on like a social media tour, like just uses it for a finite amount of time. And then when he's done, he's done. He stops, and you don't hear from him or see him anymore for another like 2 years. And then he hops back on for a few months of promoting and engagement. Disappears for a while.
That's kind of that's what I found like my new approach essentially is going to be, is that like, because one of the things I preached in the past is that before I've landed on this kind of like point in time that I'm at, is that my creative endeavors aren't going to change. I'm just utilizing whatever tools are available to me at the time. And that's what I used to quote Instagram as. I was like, I'm shooting vertical just because it happens to be like how it is at this time. I just lost the exact point I was going to with this.
Oh, it's
I knew that was going to happen once.
We were talking. I said the social media tour thing. You said this is how you're going to.
Oh yeah. So essentially, I want to like be creating outside of social media without ever having it taint my thought process, as I already have observed that it does. So what I want to use Instagram for is like a landing site to almost catch like the sediment at the bottom of the barrel. So like if I like decide that I wanted to like work on like some portrait series, and I thought a good way to do that would be to like create a video of it, then I want to do it in its native form instead of being like, I'm going to create this video and optimize it for YouTube. It sounds nice right now, but I know the fellow inside of me eventually is going to be like, well, if you just put this here, it'll be a little bit better. But then I was thinking that things like that, like Tyler Creator, is if you're not actively using it, then like you don't need to post a selfie just to like stay relevant.
Right.
It'll be like, I worked on this thing outside of here, and then I'm going to put it on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter just so that it's available now.
Right.
And then you don't have to be attached to it.
Yeah.
But we love the dopamine in between. You know, like even though you can consciously not love what's on your feed, you are subconsciously loving the action of doing something that's given you that happiness feeling before.